Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the blockchain Ask Me Anything. I am ready to get started. I just want to first, let you all know this is a little bit different than I think some of the style that I usually do. Typically, we're doing more kind of like workshop style or stream where I'm doing some kind of demo, but this is purely an Ask Me Anything. I'm happy to demo things. I also have some questions of my own prepared that have been asked in previous sessions, so we can start with those, but please feel free to start putting your questions in the Q&A channel. Any and all questions blockchain related are fair game. A little bit about me, and particularly I'll talk about how I got into blockchain in addition to what I do at Microsoft, but I am a technical program manager on the Microsoft Reactor team. I get to create and deliver learning experiences centered around emerging tech, and the way that I look at emerging tech, it's any kind of tech that has the impact to change or improve society in some way. So I'm constantly trying to kind of look and explore and find some different topics that are interesting to me and I hope will be interesting to others. Blockchain has been one of those big technologies for me. So I've been on the team for a year now, and then that's been kind of one of the big areas that I've focused on since I've been here. So, even before I joined Microsoft a few years back, what really caught my eye about blockchain was cryptocurrency. And I kind of assume, that might be similar for many folks out there, especially with the emergence of Bitcoin and kind of the big boom and peak of Bitcoin a few years back. I really wanted to know more about that. And then that kind of led me to exploring what is blockchain technology, what does it mean, and then starting to understand that, businesses are starting to invest a lot more in the technology that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies were built behind. So that started being really popular. Started exploring different like hackathons, for example, where we could build our own blockchains and kind of looking at that. Then just looking at more use cases. I think what's really interesting is when you look at the kind of history of how this technology has been used. The first phase was really all about cryptocurrency, and that's not going away. But really, and in more recent days, again, there's just so many applications being built around blockchain, and that's been really exciting to see. So I think looking past cryptocurrency for me, it was important to think about how do you actually develop with this technology? What can you build? Thinking about all the different scenarios out there. So that's kind of the path that I've been down. So now what I've been doing really in this role again for the past year is trying to find ways to continue teaching, learning and teaching of what I've kind of found about blockchain development. I focused primarily on Ethereum. There are other platforms, of course, that you can develop on. I think that was really the big one, that came about 5 years ago. And, it's not only just the kind of crypto and what you can do with trading that. There's also just the whole idea of this being the programmable blockchain. So that's kind of where I focused my time around blockchain development for Ethereum and creating some content there. And yeah, that's a little bit of a long intro, but just wanted to share a little bit more about my particular background and interest with blockchain. I also might pose some questions to you all, so I'd like to hear how other folks got interested in blockchain. You can feel free to drop some things in the chat. And yeah, I think that's about it that I'll share, at least for now, unless there are more questions there. So I am going to open it up for questions. And anything, like I mentioned, is fair game. I will start talking a little bit more and maybe sharing some resources, and we'll look around at some different things that I share. So I kind of have a few different categories of questions that I'll go ahead and jump into, from some Microsoft specific questions about how and what we're doing around blockchain, some blockchain development questions, as well as kind of like what's next or what do we have to look forward to with the future of blockchain. So those are some of the areas that I have. So I think in terms of, let's start with these Microsoft specific questions. I'll just kind of start going in order until I see something else come up. But so what is Microsoft currently working on with blockchain? I think, of course, this is a big question that came up in the last session. We talked a little bit more around kind of the different solutions that Microsoft has to offer with blockchain. What are the difference between some of these solutions? So the three big ones are the Azure Blockchain Service, Azure Blockchain Workbench, as well as the Azure Blockchain Development Kit for Ethereum. So I'm happy to go over there. I think I have some pages up. I could also share links, but you can also catch that in my URL bar. But so just as I have something to kind of show as I'm just chatting about these, the Azure Blockchain Service, this has been around since 2019, so it's really just been about a year and a half that this has been in public preview. So that means it is, generally available. Well, it is available, but it's not generally available GA, right? And there is a whole team of people working behind making this, or working towards making this GA. But Azure Blockchain Service in particular, and there's a lot of great resources around this. I can kind of show it off. I think if you look around at their documentation, we do a really great job of just explaining what this is. But Azure Blockchain Service is a really nice way to help you manage your own network. So typically it is for consortium blockchain. So here we're thinking about these private or permission blockchains. So you are very much aware of who is a part of your consortium. So with Azure Blockchain Service, you can do things like manage your consortium members. You can give them different permissions about what they're able to do on the network. Perhaps, some can only view certain transactions, or, other people might have full admin privileges that allow them to do other things like add and remove members and give them privileges. So there's that kind of member management for your consortium. There is also a lot of data that you get from Azure Blockchain Service. So just in kind of this little snapshot of it here, I don't actually have an instance up, but what you can do here is monitor blocks, transactions, events. You can do different things like set alerts. So perhaps you're looking for a certain number of transactions to happen. Maybe you're looking for a threshold and you want to be aware of what, how to respond if your network is getting a lot of traffic, for example. So there's all kinds of different alerts that you can set up, as well as just getting a nice overview of the activity that's happening on your network. Something else that's really cool that you can integrate with is the blockchain data manager. So this is a way to capture your ledger data. So here, in the dashboard, I mentioned you're seeing kind of like an overview. You don't have the particular details of what's happening, but when you use blockchain data manager, you can actually capture the full ledger details, and then you can do other things with that. You can kind of put all that data in a database. Perhaps with that data, you can set up further monitoring where you are looking for specific events to happen and then doing something after that. Like say it's some kind of supply chain or shipping company. So maybe you're waiting for a shipment of an item to be received, and when it's received, then that you can pay that vendor who did ship it, for example. So you can do all kinds of different things really to focus on managing your network within this. And yeah, I would recommend looking at the documentation to learn a little bit more. I think in particular, there are nice tutorials here. This is on the docs site. So if you want to deploy an Azure Blockchain Service member, you can do that. That's probably a great place to start. There's also a tutorial here to write a smart contract and then deploy that to Azure Blockchain Service. So there's good information there. I would recommend following the tutorials. Let's talk a little bit about Workbench. So Azure Blockchain Workbench has also been in preview. This has been around a little bit longer, so since May of 2018. And really the idea behind Azure Blockchain Workbench is it was built to allow customers to easily prototype their app ideas. So there are decentralized apps where you move kind of from your smart contract implementation with all the logic and code to kind of putting a whole user interface around your contracts and your logic. So I think this video kind of shows a nice representation of that, but it is a good way to just easily provide that interface to interact with your code, interact with your contracts, and execute transactions and kind of see here. So similarly with Azure Blockchain Service, you do see data that's being captured. You see ledger data that's being captured. I think the big difference here is that, again, like, you are creating this application so you can directly interact with your contracts there. With Azure Blockchain Service, you are kind of like seeing the data that comes in, but you're not actually like triggering any transactions within that service. Here with Azure Blockchain Workbench, you can kind of do both of those things. You can trigger some action and then see it respond within the context of Azure Blockchain Workbench. So that is a little bit more about Azure Blockchain Workbench. Of course, you can go to the doc site and see a little bit more about that. One other thing that I'll talk about, and then we can see if we want to keep talking about this or move on, folks, let me know, is the Azure Blockchain Development Kit. So I will just hop over to my VS Code instance, because that might be the best place to actually kind of come and explore what you can do with Azure Blockchain Development Kit. Pretty much every stream or you know, workshop that I've done, I've used the Azure Blockchain Development Kit, so you might have seen that before. I have a Drizzle test app. So Drizzle is what's going to allow me to build DApps, decentralized apps, really easily, but I do have some contracts here, some migrations. So if I'm looking at a sample contract, for example, what the Blockchain Development Kit is going to do is make it really easy for me to interact with some of these different contracts. So I can do things like build, deploy. There is a way to interact with contracts here. Oh, it's telling me there's nothing available because I do need to build and deploy them. My bad. But some of that, I think some of my favorite features that I will talk about is some of the integrations. So for example, OpenZeppelin is a big one that we integrate with. I'm really a big fan of OpenZeppelin. OpenZeppelin provides me a whole contracts library that I can use. So what's nice about this is you can use their set of well-tested contracts within your own projects. There's a lot of great contracts available for you there to interact with. Something else, let's see, the deployment options. I can kind of briefly show this off here. I think I have most of my deployment options set up, but you know, I can develop to my local network using Truffle. I can develop to Azure or deploy to Azure Blockchain Service. I can also deploy to Infura. Infura is another good example. Infura is just kind of a Ethereum network, you might say, where there's lots of different networks here. So it's kind of just an Ethereum platform where I can deploy to mainnet. There's a whole host of different test networks I can deploy to here. So there's really a lot of options and integrations. I think the deployment ones are really cool, as well as the one with OpenZeppelin. And then there's also an option to deploy to Hyperledger Besu, which is just another platform that you have available to you there. And while I'm here, let me just throw some of the links in chat in case folks want to check this out on your own. The first one I'll throw up is the link to the doc site itself, where there's just a lot of great tutorials that you can follow. So recommend that, as well as just this other one is just where you can learn more about our solutions. And if you haven't perhaps played around with the solutions, I would also recommend folks try it out. This with Azure, get some free Azure credit. If you don't already have an account set up, you can easily do that. And then I'll pause for a minute. I think a question that I didn't get to here, which I'll just share, is the partnerships that the Microsoft blockchain team has right now. So you can find a lot of these on the website, actually, if you go there and look for customers. But I think that there are some cool stories here, kind of across a variety of industries. And I think this goes to show that, blockchain is really starting to be adapted across many different industries for so many different use cases. So this can be a great resource to start to read some of these customer stories, actually, about like how these particular companies are being innovative and integrating with blockchain in some way. I really like all of these examples. I think just a couple to call out, of course you can read, so I don't need to go through all of this, is the Starbucks story. I think this is, a good example, a big industry that we've seen a lot of growth in just over 2020 and in the recent years has been with farming. So with this particular example, Starbucks can actually kind of track the origin of their coffee beans, so from farm all the way to their stores. I think that is valuable for, a couple different reasons, but first you're actually kind of verifying that your coffee beans are coming from where they say they are. You can verify, how long it's taking them from getting to the farm to the store and kind of can confirm that shipment easily and know if something is going wrong along the way. And I think that's, again, kind of a really common, I guess is the word that's coming to mind, more of like a more common scenario that we're seeing with farming or with kind of supply chain, where we can easily track how goods are being distributed. Another one that I'll call out, I think the airline stories are interesting. Singapore Airlines, for example, is using loyalty points basically and kind of converting those into blockchain-based tokens that can be spent across various places. So I think that this is another good example for a couple different reasons. Number one, just the emergence of blockchain tokens being used to represent some kind of digital asset. So you kind of have these specific coins that you can earn that do represent some kind of value that you can use to buy particular things. So I think just the emergence of tokens, again, at any kind of like retailer, we can start to see more of those examples where pretty much anyone that has a loyalty program, you can think of maybe like online gaming where you can earn points for playing the game and then spend those in return for something. So those are perfect scenarios to think about how you can use blockchain technology as well. I'm going to move on about Microsoft specific questions, unless there are any others. But yeah, I think the last thing that I will say around this, and kind of what I alluded to, is that the team is pretty much focusing on those 3 solutions that I had mentioned and kind of showed and what they do. But yeah, the team is actively working on those, especially since they are in preview. It'll be about kind of getting them towards like this general available state. Hi, Salvador. Yeah, I see your question. Starbucks case sounds really interesting. I have not really had experience in blockchain, but will easily follow the Azure tools by the tutorials in order to create a similar project as Starbucks did with traceability. Yeah, definitely, Salvador. And I think this is maybe a good time just to highlight something else that could be of use. I'll just bring this up. And I have a link for it, but especially, if you're not really so familiar with blockchain outside of looking at those docs and the tutorials there, I would also recommend this learning path on getting started with blockchain development. even the introduction module, it kind of follows a theme. So it very much does start from the beginning where it's talking about, blockchain and distributed ledger technology. I think what's interesting here is it does all follow this example of a supply chain. So here we're kind of looking at an ice cream distributor where there are different parties involved. So you do have your farmer, where the dairy products are coming from. You have your shippers over here. You have your factory where the ice cream is being made, and you eventually have your ice cream store. So this is different from the Starbucks use case, of course, but I think it allows you to think about how there are different parties involved in this blockchain network who are working together, how we can use blockchain to kind of track the products as they're kind of advancing in their manufacturing cycle and moving towards the store actually. So this can be a really nice kind of tutorial. Some of it is just reading along, some of it you do get to get a little bit more hands-on with later in this learning path, but I do like that it's scenario based, so you can start to think about this and just how you might apply that and start to think about your own use cases as well. All right, so I'm going to move on. To talk a little bit more about blockchain development. So I think blockchain development is, like I mentioned, something that's really important for me and something that has been kind of consuming my attention and trying to learn about this. So these are just some other questions that I've gotten in the past around blockchain development. A couple months ago, towards the end of September, actually, I did a live stream with a blockchain member, one of the founding blockchain members team members at Microsoft, where we really talked about like, how do you become a blockchain developer? So we talked about a lot of these questions, and these are still questions that commonly come up. So I think what are the different roles available for a blockchain developer? Really all kinds of different roles. I think you can think about what are the different roles for a software developer, and this is kind of the same answer that I come to here. You can focus on the front end, building those apps and those user interfaces around a blockchain application or solution. You can really focus on the back end and thinking about like how you can create these smart contracts and the logic for the network. You could do both of those things, so you can be a full stack developer. You can really kind of focus on architecture, so perhaps really thinking about how you are going to design this network in an efficient way, or security, like how you can really make sure that your product is secure, and even thinking about like how you can make your code more secure and less vulnerable. There's lots of options there. So as far as what languages can be used for blockchain development, this was actually a question that came up in last week's session, so I did want to take some time to talk about this a little bit more. And let me share the link for that too, in case this is helpful. And I will kind of talk specifically about Ethereum. There's more options out there. I think Ethereum is going to be kind of one of the main platforms that you see blockchain developers using. So I'll focus my attention here for now. So I think what I've done is really focus on Solidity. So Solidity is kind of that main programming language that Ethereum supports. But there are pretty much a number of different languages, pretty much any other language that you want to use here, so that you could see. Let me can zoom in a little bit here. So, whether or not you have a background in Java or Python or .NET, there are other solutions out there, client implementations that you can easily use to program an Ethereum. So I think that this is interesting to explore. There's a lot of good resources here. All of these client implementations that they provide are open source. I think they have really good support. So this could be something interesting to check out if you do want to get started with development and you don't necessarily want to learn a new language. So let me hop over to the Learn by Coding section, because I think There are some awesome resources here that I would highly recommend. There's a bunch of code sandboxes. Remix is a big one that I'm a huge fan of. Remix, just kind of that online browser IDE experience that you can use. There's also eth.build, which is more of like a drag and drop programming tool for allowing you to learn more about blockchain and Ethereum development. The creator of eth.build also makes really fun and kind of informative videos that you can use to follow along with the tutorials. There's also some fun game tutorials, so I think most of these will really center around Solidity again as that programming language that you can use, but highly recommend Crypto Zombies. That can be a really fun way to learn more about Ethereum. And yeah, I can click on this for a minute, actually, why not? Just if you're interested in kind of looking around, but it's like a whole course. There are lots of different sections that you can go through as part of this course, like to really learn a lot more about Ethereum and blockchain. So I do recommend it. You don't have to have an account or anything to get started. You can just kind of get going with playing around with different things. So I think this type of tutorial is really fun. It's making me want to play it again now. In case anyone is interested, you can search for it, but I'll share the link in there too. Let me get out of here. And then there's also some developer boot camps that you might want to check out. I think just in general, Consensus is another company that has really good info. They are an Ethereum software companies that really make it easy and kind of enable developers and businesses to build applications on their platform. So they have a whole product suite as well as just a bunch of different resources. So like this Bootcamp Academy, for example, other tutorials and learning resources. So that can be something really good to check out. But yeah, lots of those resources. I think if I had to recommend a few at Remix, eth.build, and Crypto Zombies just to check out to get started with. I'll just pause for a minute again in case anything else comes up. All right. The next section that I wanted to explore a little bit about was the future of blockchain. So, I mean, this is an interesting topic. It's always, you know, kind of curious to look towards the future of any tech, but I think especially something like blockchain, which I very much do consider to be an emerging technology. And I mentioned we've been at this stage for a couple years where we're really moving past cryptocurrency and thinking about other applications, other use cases, ways to kind of incorporate blockchain into across many industries. So I don't know, I think it's cool to look towards the future, and there's a couple things that are standing out in terms of my mind, in my mind specifically, particularly the first one that I wanted to talk a little bit about was Ethereum 2.0. So many of the platforms out there, I think, it's very important for them to think about how they can continue to be more mature, so how they can constantly be improving their security, their scalability, how they can just work for their customers a little bit better. So just constantly thinking about how to improve. So Ethereum 2.0 has been talked about for quite a while. So I wanted to share a little bit about that and kind of what the implications are there. Nope. I did have a link for this, but we can go and explore it. So let's go ahead and learn, and yeah, Ethereum 2.0 is what I was looking for. So Ethereum 2.0, this has been talked about for a little while. Really, the big three things that they're focusing on is how to make it more scalable. So thinking about as the network continues to grow in popularity and use, how they can support all of these transactions that are happening. What Ethereum is really good about is really being able to kind of confirm transactions in a matter of 10 to 15 seconds. This is still much different than, for example, Bitcoin, where you have transactions on that network that take about 10 minutes to be confirmed, and that's kind of just been the standard. Ethereum is much quicker in that regard, but they're still always looking for ways to kind of make it more instantaneous, especially when we think about all of the development use cases for the Ethereum platform. So really thinking about how to make it faster, how to make it easier and cheaper for developers to use, as well as security is just another big thing. So constantly kind of thinking about new protocols to introduce to the platform to make it more secure and kind of prevent some various attacks that can happen. And more sustainable. So this is really around the mining process. So I did want to talk a little bit about that. So one of the big things that folks have been looking forward to is staking. So proof of stake. All of the big cryptocurrency platforms, Bitcoin, Ethereum, have traditionally used a consensus mechanism called proof of work. So folks have probably heard about things like mining, the whole process of kind of solving this really complicated math problem using a really sophisticated computer with a lot of expensive hardware. So you have these big mining rigs that you use to kind of solve this math problem and be the one to get to choose the next block that goes into the chain and then verify all the transactions within that block. So that's kind of been the current, or the really kind of the only way to do things since these platforms have come around. So over the past 10 years, that's been the only way to do things. But folks have really been looking forward to staking as an alternative. So as opposed to having these really powerful machines that you use to solve these problems, all that is going to go away. And that makes it more sustainable, better for the environment, where you're not having these big, complicated problems to solve using a lot of computing power, just using a lot of power in general. So that's all going to go away very soon. With Ethereum, this is happening as soon as December. So really, this is just right around the corner. With Bitcoin, I think it will happen soon after. So maybe early 2021 is when we'll see this happen. But kind of the key of staking is you have more authority in the network. You can say you have to actually put up a stake. So you put up what Ethereum is asking for is 32 Ether. Which is substantial. That is quite a bit of money if the current price of Ether is about 9K for one. So that is, a substantial stake that you're putting in the network, and basically you kind of just put that on hold. You say that, okay, I'm going to put this up at stake. So I'm almost like depositing this money or putting it in a holding spot so that then I have the authority to validate the new blocks that are coming in. You have the authority to do that. And there's kind of a pool of stakers that they choose from to validate each block that comes in. So probably a lot of words. It would probably help to maybe see how this works a little bit more. It is much different from proof of work, but the main idea here is basically you have this pool of validators or stakers who get to choose the current block. So it makes the process a lot more smooth, a lot more environmentally friendly. And it's really interesting. I'm excited to see how this works. I do love the idea. I think it limits, the amount of folks that can actually become validators in the staking pool by just having some kind of not majority, but you do have, some stake is the word I keep coming back to in this platform that kind of gives you the power to validate these blocks. So it's really interesting. I think another thing about staking, since you are actually kind of putting up your own currency as a part of this, but they are thinking that it's going to help to make the platforms a lot more secure by being able to do things like reduce the possible bad actors. I think you're going to be less likely to try to kind of scam the system if you have put your own money up for stake. It also will do things like help reduce the risk of 51% attacks. So 51% attacks have been pretty common over the past few years. I think some of this page might explain that a little bit more. But essentially, what those 51% attacks can do is say that if someone has more than 50%, so 51%, a majority in the network, they can basically take control and do all kinds of malicious things, basically whatever they want on the network. So they think that staking will help to prevent this because there'll be more people who kind of care about the validity of the network. And that's another reason that they put their stake up. They really want this network to be secure and to run smoothly. So yeah, there is a lot to look forward there. It's kind of gonna be released in stages, Ethereum 2.0 that is, but there are a number of things happening. So December 1st, 2020 is when staking is gonna go live. Then there's some other steps along the way, which I won't really get into. There's a lot of details there, but this has been super cool to me just to read about and kind of to follow this happening because it's been talked about for years now. So it's super exciting that this is starting to happen. There we go, sorry. All right. The other thing that I want to share, I do have a whole list of resources here. I can go ahead and drop all of these in chat. 1 second. But I think if folks out there are just learning and kind of just want to have more information around blockchain, particularly like around blockchain development, I think that's most of these resources here, but I have a short link to that learning path that I had shared, as well as the Microsoft Reactor blockchain video list. So if you go there, you'll see on our YouTube the blockchain playlist. So there's past videos that I've done, as well as other folks have done there that are a little bit more like traditional. So they do walk you through something specific. They are conversations with blockchain developers and such. A couple links that I shared before, that link, the docs to the Azure blockchain solutions. The Block Talk show is interesting. That is very much kind of like internally focused. We do a lot more on kind of talking around the Microsoft solutions and what you can do with them, but those are nice. Those are between like 5 and 20 minutes, let's say, that show you really cool short demos of how to do specific things. And then the last one is an introduction to blockchain with Mark Russinovich. So that is about an hour long from the CTO of Azure, Mark Russinovich, and he provides an awesome explanation of blockchain. So that is one of my favorite videos that I recommend. Like, if you just want to learn more about blockchain technology and what it has to offer, totally check that out. And then I will just plug a couple upcoming live streams that are happening. So December 2nd, I am going to do a kind of a demo of how to build a decentralized app. So walking through just how to build this from scratch. We're going to use this tool called Drizzle to kind of help build this React native app and interact with some smart contracts. As well as the week after that, December 9th, there's going to be a session on exploring Ethereum networks, which will be pretty hands-on again. We'll deploy to a couple different networks. I showed off some of those today, like the local. I'm probably going to spend more time talking about a bunch of the different test networks there are, as well as the process of how you can think about getting your solution towards mainnet. And then I will show this. I'm kind of just showing the resources, but I will stick around if there are any more questions, and I'll get to this question I see in a minute. I do just want to point out for those of you watching, please take a quick survey about this event at aka.ms/reactor/survey. The event code is shown there, and then I want to show my contact information so folks can always follow up and chat with me a little bit. If you do have any questions, you can reach me at any of those mediums there. So this question that came in, how long do you think it will take to become useful for a developer who knows little about blockchain development? That is a good question. Useful. I think, yeah, that's probably a key word there. I mean, it really depends, right? Like on what you mean by useful. Like, I don't know if your goal is to actually get a job as a blockchain developer or just to be able to develop on blockchain. I think, some of the resources that I shared earlier, I definitely would start there with just like the Ethereum site, following along some of these tutorials, getting hands-on. I think that's always the best thing that you can do is actually get hands-on experience with these things, building your own, contracts and applications and learning there. And I think that's really where you want to kind of focus on getting a lot of experience. So how long do I think it will take? It depends, right, on how much time you have to actually dedicate to this stuff and go through it. But I think, even if you did dedicate just like a few hours a week, I'd even think in, a matter of a month or two, like you could have built some of your own solutions. You could have learned a lot. There's always more to learn. I've been really kind of focused on like the blockchain development side of things for, about a year now. And I realize there's still so much to learn and so much to explore, even like thinking about the platforms that you want to develop on. So yeah, I think that's why I recommend kind of starting with Ethereum. There are other platforms that folks use and kind of build solutions off, like Hyperledger and Corda, for example, but maybe don't concern yourself with like too much. I would say like kind of focus on a specific goal that you think about that you want to learn. So like one platform and what you can do with that. I think about kind of the whole process from like development to test to, again, getting towards like production. Like, how do you get your blockchain app into mainnet? You might want to kind of approach it with a specific goal in mind like that. All right, I'm just pausing because I'm seeing if anything else comes in, but if there are no other questions, I will wrap things up in the next minute or so. So if you have anything, please ask it now. And thank you all again for joining me today. Again, this is different than I usually do. So definitely interesting to try out a new format and kind of try this Ask Me Anything. But yeah, I hope you learned something new today. I think from anything that I do, that's always my goal, that you learn something new, that you found some useful information, that like you found something that you personally want to explore more. I think even kind of going back to that last question about like how do you become useful with blockchain development, seriously, like find something that you're passionate about and go explore that thing more. You know, start with one thing and learn more about that. But the whole idea is to think about how you can kind of continue to learn more information and then find other things that spark your interest. All right, well, I think that's all that I have. So I hope that you all have a great day wherever you are calling in from and that you take care. Cheers.